Welcome back, everybody. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Sylvester Inspires Belief Cast. I can't tell you how excited I am, man. Today is an amazing day. We've got an amazing guest, Johnny Farmer, which we'll get to in a minute. But I do have to say, this music that you just listened to was created by a client of mine named Aaron Wood. And amazing kid. He's a senior at Alta High School. And he created this. He calls it Believe, actually, the music. And you'll be able to hear the rest of it at the end of this podcast. And so we'll feel very fortunate at that. And then, again, we're sponsored again by Veracity Networks. A good friend of mine, Drew Peterson, who's the founder of that company, we've teamed up together, and we're sending this out. So I can't thank you guys enough. We're trending on iTunes, man, and we've had some amazing guests on, and today is no different. We have Mike Haws, who's better known as Johnny Farmer.
That is correct.
So welcome.
Thank you, Todd. It's an honor to be here. It's a privilege. Congratulations on your new sponsorship with Veracity.
Thank you.
That's very, very cool. So you are definitely trending in the right direction. So congratulations. Thanks for having me on.
Bet. Absolutely. Thank you for that. And but I want to thank you for taking the time. You have an amazing story. You're doing amazing things in this life, and people need to hear this. And I can't wait for them to hear your story. You are the founder and or co-founder of Red Barn Academy.
Correct.
Right, which is an amazing program. Is it a 2-year long program?
It's a 2-year residential life skills program that's in a farm setting.
Right. And I want to read something that I got off your website. I'll be honest, but this really hit me hard, and I want to talk about this. Red Barn Academy is a men's residential multi-year vocational training school patterned after the Delancey Street model in California. Red Barn Academy is not a treatment center, and I love this part. Red Barn Academy is not a medical or clinical program. Medications are not allowed. And we're going to get into that and why that's so important for the success of your students or residents, or I don't know, what do you call them?
Students.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I just love that because anyway, I have my opinions about medication and this and that. I think there's a time and place for them, but I also think that we're over medicated here in this world, and I love that portion of your program. And we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit let our listeners know a little bit about your background, where you grew up, a little bit about your family, and we'll kind of go from there.
Okay. Well, thank you, Todd. Thanks again for having me here and for the wonderful introduction. Again, my name is Michael Haws. I'm also known, especially in the recovery community, as Johnny Farmer.
Right.
My middle name is Johnny, and obviously I work on a farm. And as altruistic as it sounds, we are in the business of saving lives. And, the first life that I really had to take a hard look at was my own life. Right. I grew up in Davis County, just north of here, about 20 minutes, in a little city called Centerville. Spent my whole life there when I wasn't running away from my problems. There's 6 kids in my family. I'm the second oldest.
All right.
I have an older brother that's 13 months older than me. His name is David. I have a little brother, CJ, little sister, Emily, Dustin, who we'll talk a little bit more about, and then my youngest little brother, Taylor. And, Todd, I grew up in a wonderful family, very, very blessed. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. I played soccer, played golf, played Little League football. I have fond memories of my mother working with me through the scouting program. It was mandatory in my family to get your Eagle Scout. And so I should honor her in this moment because she's the one who got my Eagle for me. But, I have real fond memories growing up. My dad worked hard. He was a disciplinarian in our household. We grew up in a very religious family. It was an expectation, obviously, to attend church on Sundays and, live a certain, standard in our household. But I also remember at an early age that I didn't fit in.
Okay.
I was actually looking at some pictures the other day as I was putting a PowerPoint presentation together for my students. And I found this picture. It was, like most of us, growing up, it was our first day of kindergarten.
Right.
I'm standing there on the front porch with, my shirt tucked in and my new backpack and, a new pair of shiny white Reebok shoes. And I had this kind of puzzled look on my face. I had this kind of dejected, hunched over a little bit, and I was not smiling. And I picked up on that because my older brother was smiling. My younger sister was smiling. But I remember thinking, I just didn't quite fit in with my friends. I just didn't feel like I was accepted. I felt like I was a little different,
right?
At a very young age. And so growing up in the community that I grew up in, I had a lot of opportunities, with sports, even with school. And, as I grew up and, went to elementary school and, even on to junior high, I remember, as sad as it sounds, and I know I'm playing the victim here, but I was always the last one picked.
Right.
I was a little chubby. I wasn't as tall as my friends. I remember thinking that, I was younger for my
Right.
class. I was a late bloomer. I didn't hit puberty till later on in life.
Sure.
I remember all my friends, manly men in high school that were showering and shaving and, and I felt out of place. I know.
Right.
I just didn't feel like I fit in very well. And
Yeah.
so that's a theme that, was consistent, through my upbringing.
Did your family know about that? Did your parents pick up on that you were struggling, not fitting in, or is this something you kind of just kept to yourself?
I kept that to myself. I think that was one of the first secrets that I kept.
Right.
My family was like a very typical family here in our community. We didn't talk about our problems. We didn't talk about our shortcomings.
Right.
My dad was very positive and optimistic and a real go-getter and, very
Right.
successful. And so, he implemented really kind of a mindset in our family that there was no other option than to be successful and to be number one and, get straight A's in school and, excel.
Right.
Because that's what he did. He's very
Sure.
talented, in every aspect of his life. And so, I felt like I lived under the burden of potential. Right.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, I wasn't really holding back, but I could never quite live up. And this was a part of my belief system and the narrative that I had in my own life. The story that I told myself is I just wasn't good enough. I just couldn't
Right.
quite keep up. I always looked at the half glass empty, and that was just my mindset. And I think
Right.
I was trying to protect myself from really feeling bad about myself, just saying, I'm just not good enough. And that's just how you're going to live your life.
Yeah. It's amazing how that plays such a dramatic, thing in our life because belief dictates the way we behave.
Right.
Right. And so, and most kids and on different levels believe that they're not good enough when we're going through that transition of junior high, trying to find who we are.
Right.
But some kids, it affects a lot more deeper. And it sounds like that's kind of where you fit in the sense of that is, man, it was this deep entrenched, man, I'm just not good enough. I don't fit in, what's wrong with me kind of thing. Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, fair assessment, didn't have a girlfriend, was scared to talk to girls, and,
Which is, I'm laughing, and here's why I'm laughing, because like people who know you now, and I've met you recently, which has been great, by the way, is you're a very powerful presence.
Thank you.
Like I don't know how to explain it, but energy you can't fake, right? Light you can't fake, and it introduces itself when you walk into the room.
Thank you.
You command the room, man, and so that's why I'm chuckling, like how you're saying you were, but to see you today, it's awesome, and we'll get to that how that transition came in, but
yeah. Well,
I love
thank
that.
you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then as I, fast forward a little bit through high school, I was faced with really, kind of a crossroads in my life because, where I grew up in the community that I grew up in, that's when, the drugs and the alcohol and, some of the curiosities started to set in. And I wanted to be like my friends that were the athletes that played on the basketball team and the football team. And I remember, one evening, it was after a basketball game where, a bunch of us got together and one of my buddies, he pulled out a bottle of Everclear and a bottle of Sunny Delight, and he mixed the two together. Mm-hmm. And I remember when he passed that around and that overwhelming feeling to fit in just overtook me. And as soon as I took a pull off of that Everclear and Sunny Delight, all my fears went away.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, like it was yesterday, that, oh my gosh, we're going to do this a lot. Yeah. Because now I'm taller. Now I'm better looking. Now I'll go talk to girls. It was kind of like, all right, now I can come out and play.
Right.
And some people say they like the effects produced by alcohol and drugs. I mean, I like banana pudding. I loved alcohol. I loved the effects because all those fears went away from me. Yeah. And all of a sudden I started to feel a little bit better about myself. And, and that's, I felt like I had arrived.
Yeah. And not, you say how much you loved it, but I also would add, based on what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, here you are with your group of friends and it comes around to you. It's your turn to take a drink.
Yeah.
Not only did it taste good to you in the first way, but in that moment, you are now accepted by the group.
Yep.
And that's probably even more intoxicating than the alcohol itself.
Correct.
I fit in now. Mm-hmm. I'm one of you.
Yeah, there was a connection. Yep. And that's all I ever wanted was to be accepted, to feel connected.
Exactly.
And that moment really stands out in my mind as really a critical kind of a key moment in my life.
Yeah, and it also forms this belief that alcohol helps me connect.
Yep.
And therefore, belief dictates behavior. So what are you going to start doing from that point? I'm going to start throwing back some alcohol.
Right.
Because I'm going to keep connecting because I love this. Right. Anyway.
And you're spot on, and that really resonates with me. And so therein lies the conflict in my life because in my family it's unacceptable to drink and use any type of mind-altering substances. Right. And so now there was a pattern, and really I have to let the listeners know that my life was really kind of a mess before I even found alcohol. And what I mean by that is at an early age, in order to live up to the expectations that I felt I had on myself was, I started cheating in high school. I started cheating as young. I remember in elementary school, cheating on exams. I mean, I remember one situation. This was obviously, and this dates me, way before cell phones. But I had a math test coming up that I was feeling not so good about, and I remember going down to the payphone and calling the front office from the payphone to have this particular teacher show up to the front office. And then my buddy went in, grabbed the exam, and stole the exam so we could get the answers prior to the test. And so at an early age, because there were no consequences for those actions or for those behaviors, I thought, well, the rules don't apply to me.
Right.
And then I would get validation from friends and family for excelling in school, and that's something that is an important part of my story as well, because I felt like that this terminal uniqueness that don't you know who I am kind of attitude and mindset was something that I could also carry through with drinking and later on when I found drugs. And so I can't blame drugs and alcohol on my life being a mess. I didn't have a solid foundation of core principles or mores that I call them that I believed in. And so I was kind of floating around and doing whatever I could to be accepted, whether it was to cheat on an exam or, drink alcohol and do drugs with my friends.
Wow.
And so as my story continues, the conflict that I felt by not having a value-centered life or living with integrity was very, very difficult. And so the remedy for me was drink more alcohol, right? Make that go away. Yeah. And so I felt very conflicted, and I started to have to wear that mask or put on that, that front or facade, which is very, very taxing, to live a double life.
For sure.
Drink and party on the weekends at night, come home, go to church on Sundays, pretend like I'm going to be this, whatever I had, and this ideal in my mind, or what I thought my family wanted me to be, was very, very troubling. And I think that's what brought on this, depression and anxiety and just, not being able to be authentic, and really not knowing who I was.
Right.
And that was difficult as I moved through high school and then, and then moving into college.
Sure.
Because when I went to college that's when, I went up to Utah State. Actually went up there on a golf scholarship.
Okay.
And that's when I was really introduced to the whole party scene with the fraternities and the sororities, and the curiosity really set in because now I'm away from home, so I don't have to check in, and now I'm at this school and college, and now I can go crazy and
do whatever you
again
want.
There's no consequences, right?
Well, going back real quick, let's go back a little bit. Did your parents know that you were drinking and partying? Did they catch on to that, or did you kind of try to keep that hidden? Okay.
Not the extent. I think once or twice I was confronted by my parents, but at this point, because I grew up in a family where religion was the predominant topic in our family,
right?
And my dad was a bishop, and I thought to myself, there's no way. Not only am I not going to tell my dad, but I can't tell the bishop what's going on, right? So that was
you
a
were
double.
Really stuck.
Yeah, so I was stuck there. So it was like, are you drinking? Yeah. No, hell no, I'm not drinking. I would never do that, right? Because I didn't want to let my dad down. I didn't want to let my family down, and I knew deep down inside that it wasn't right. I knew that. In my core, I knew it wasn't right.
Yeah.
And then to have to cover up with lies and deceit and everything else that went along with that, I knew the difference between right and wrong.
Right.
And I started to compromise early on, and, that just continued all the way through high school up to college.
Wow. So you head up to Utah State. And
went up to Utah State.
Was it a golf scholarship?
Yeah, so I went up there on a golf scholarship. I was one of those wimpy golfers that wore khakis and a polo shirt.
Because you look more like a football player right now. So that's why I was like, did you say golf scholarship?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny because my buddies used to make fun of me for playing golf, and now all of my buddies that are ex-football players and basketball players that are all broken down, they're the ones calling me saying, "Hey, Mike, will you give me a golf lesson? I got my boss coming to town." And my response is, "No, go pound sand, bro. I'm not going to help you." So, and that's probably part of who I even am today, is trying to compensate for, being, who I grew up as, and not really liking, not really wanting to be that person anymore. But it's important for the listeners to know that when I went up to Utah State, my whole game plan was to go out and serve a Mormon mission, an LDS mission. And so I had the opportunity to go to school for a year to play golf up at Utah State. And that's where kind of where I was living this double life was I enjoyed partying. I enjoyed being with the fraternities and the sororities, but I still, in the back of my mind, knew I had to go on this mission. I knew I could dabble in, this lifestyle to a certain extent, but I couldn't cross over too far because heaven forbid I let my family down. That was really what was always weighing on me. And so what was interesting about going on a mission, I actually went on a Mormon mission when I was 19 years old. I went to Ecuador, to Guayaquil. I went into the Missionary Training Center, which is down here in Provo, on my 19th birthday. So I actually checked in down there for a couple of months. Didn't have a clue what I was getting myself into, but all my friends were doing it, right? So, I'm a sucker for peer pressure. And so, of course, you want to fit in. I want to fit in. I don't want to be the guy that stays back. And so, and what's interesting, Todd, about that experience that I had is, I didn't use any mind-altering substances or drink when I was this Mormon missionary. So the connection that I've made is I have this void in my life that now, instead of filling it with drugs and alcohol, I'm now filling it with service work. I'm now filling it with this connection piece, because now I'm connected to something bigger than myself. And being a missionary, in South America, I kept all the rules. I followed them with exactness, partly because I didn't want to die down there. And my leaders told me that if I wasn't obedient, then I, wouldn't be protected. But at the same time, I felt complete. I felt safe. I felt like there was a purpose in my life. And what I was doing it wasn't so much about the message that I was sharing. It was that I was serving the people of South America. I had this outward mindset. I was thinking of other people as opposed to myself. Because see, my problem is I get too much of me on me. That's my problem. And so when I start thinking about me and how am I going to get what I need to get through the day, I become so self-absorbed and consumed with myself that, that's what distances myself from God and from you and other people around me. And so that outward mindset that I developed and that service is what really had a major impact on me as a missionary. And to be honest, it was, and I know you hear this and it's cliche, but the greatest 2 years of my life. I absolutely loved it. Not only did I learn to work hard and have discipline, I learned a foreign language. It was amazing.
Well, it's interesting you say the work hard and discipline, which I know are some of the characteristics and principles that you teach at the Red Barn Academy.
Yes.
Which we'll get into here in a minute. But yeah, it's interesting. Like when we give of ourselves, give it away, serve others, like you're forgetting who you are per se, but you actually learn who you are when you do that. It's kind of a catch-22 thing.
Well, I call it a recovery paradox.
Okay.
I call it enlightened self-interest, right?
Oh, I like that.
I mean, there's more to it than that, but it's along the lines of, in order for me to get what I need, peace, serenity, joy in my life, I first need to help you get that. and then it comes back to me for
Right.
sure.
Yeah, I love
And we
that.
say that, but then to experience it, I mean, it gives me chills because that's what my life is about today. So people say you've got this outward mindset. And I said, no, really, I'm a selfish, self-centered son of a bitch. But I know that if I help you, I know it's going to come back to me.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to sleep better. I know my relationships are going to get better. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be able to look at the guy in the mirror and be okay with who I see.
Right.
So really, at the end of the day, it still is kind of all about me.
Well, it is.
You know?
That's true. And this is a tough thing for people to like swallow. Like it's almost a selfish act when we do something for someone else because it is benefiting us.
Right.
Like you said, all those blessings you receive by doing it.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want that?
Right.
So yeah, I want more of that. So I'm going to do more of this.
Yeah. So what I have to do today, Todd, is I have to ask myself, what are my motives here? Can I engage in this selfless act and not expect anything in return? What is, really the motives?
Sure.
What are my intentions right now? That's what I ask myself that on a daily, what are my motives today? Are they pure? Are they in line with what my principles are and what I teach my students at Red Barn Academy? And so that's the battle, the internal battle that I have on a daily basis.
Yeah. Wow. Well, we're going to get to that, but I also want to, let's talk about, because, you come home from a mission.
Yep.
Best 2 years of your life, everything seemed great, but then things take a turn. So let's talk a little bit about that and kind of what led up to what you call, is it your new life date? Is that
Yeah, my new life date.
Yeah. So let's kind of get to that. And I love that, by the way. And matter of fact, I'm going to steal that from you. I'm going to say it on air here. I'm stealing it because I'm going to tell my clients to start saying that. I love it.
Good. Well, I stole it from someone else.
Okay.
It's like anything in recovery, or it's never a new idea, right? I stole it from someone else.
But I love it.
But yeah, so I'll speed through this real quick. So I come back from my mission, fall back into my old ways. There's not the structure there.
Right.
Like I said, I'm guilty of peer pressure. But the moment in my life that really altered the course and the trajectory of the rest of my life was when I came back from my mission. I went into the off season. My golf game wasn't really good. I was struggling. I mean, I didn't touch a golf club for 2 years down in South America, obviously.
Right.
And I got in there with the football players and basketball players, and I started lifting weights. And I wasn't doing it properly. And I was lifting, and I herniated my back, the discs in my back, the L4, L5 discs in my back. So now I'm in pain. And I remember going, because I was in so much pain, to the team doctor in the athletic department, and he prescribed me my first prescription of pain medication and narcotics.
Right.
And it wasn't so much the pain pills that he gave me, but it's what he said to me. He said, Mike, he says, you have a legitimate injury. He said, you're welcome to come see me anytime you're in pain, but this is going to be our secret. So keep this between you and I.
Oh, wow.
So again, goes back to keeping secrets.
And
man. What I've learned,
kill,
they do. And I tell my students all the time, we're only as sick as our secrets.
Yeah.
So again, that started me on a whole nother path. And, I'm drinking a little bit, but not as much. But now I'm starting to use pain medications daily. I make the connection that, when life is tough and I'm struggling at school, I take a pain pill. When life is good, I'm taking a pain pill. Then I'm mixing muscle relaxers in. And this goes on for the rest of my, college experience, and I'm building up a tolerance. And before I know it, I don't really understand what drug addiction is, and, the physical addiction and the mental obsession and all the things that go along with that. But, as I start to move through college and graduate from college, I graduate with a marketing degree, and I know my family knows that I'm not in a good place, because someone who takes the amount of pain meds, 30 or 40 pills a day, you're sweating, you're paced. I mean, you're throwing up.
You're nodding out.
You're nodding out. You don't look good. So I graduate from college, and the first job that I get is a pharmaceutical sales rep job.
Oh, wow.
And like I said, that's a great job for a drug addict, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm in drug closets, and, I'm waiting for signatures because I'm dropping off samples, and I'm reading package inserts, and it said things like, don't crush this. So I'd crush it. Don't mix this with this. I would mix it. And then, doctors would say, we lock up our narcotics. No. I could always find narcotics whenever I needed to.
Right.
Now, my addiction and dependence on this is becoming so intense that now I'm starting to call in my own prescriptions, because now I've got DEA numbers. Wow. Because I'm a drug rep, and I've got over 200 DEA numbers. So now I start doctor shopping. I call in, I get arrested for the first time, walking into a pharmacy because I'd called in my own prescription in the middle of the day. I walk into a pharmacy, and they take my ID, and they say, Mr. Haws, just wait here for a second. I turn around, there's 2 police officers there. arrest me, handcuffs. You talk about the walk of shame. They walked me out of that pharmacy.
Because it's in the back of the store.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
You got to
walk all the way to the front. Yep.
Oh, wow.
And it says right there on every pharmacy, it is a federal crime. So that's where I picked up my first felony, was falsifying, controlled substances. And so that really continued. And, shortly after college, I got married. I started that off on a lie, and with Major Secrets, that only lasted for a few years. And an important part of that, part of my story is, I was about three and a half years into my marriage, and my ex-wife confronted me and said, I know you got a problem here. You need to do something about it. And of course, I rationalized, justified, downplay it. I got an injury. I've got an MRI that shows that I'm hurt.
Yeah, here's the proof.
Exactly. And we were living at the time, actually, we'd moved out of Utah when I graduated from Utah State, moved down to Henderson, Nevada. So we're living just outside of Las Vegas. And I remember it was the first week of May. But my ex-wife said to me, hey, we're going to go back and visit your parents because my mother and father both celebrate their birthdays the first week of May. And we come into their house and we walk into the front room, and my whole family's sitting there, and they've all got letters. And Here we go, right?
Yeah.
An intervention.
Yep.
My mom's in tears. I'm going to lose my son, and it goes on and on and on. And immediately I just get pissed. I'm pissed at my ex-wife. I'm pissed at my family. You guys don't understand, whatever. And so begrudgingly, I go off to my first treatment center, my first 30-day facility.
Right.
I call them high-priced jitter joints. I went in there for 30 days. You shake like a leaf, right? They give you acupuncture detox. They're sticking needles in your ears. They're massaging your feet. They got a beautiful pool, 800 thread count sheets. I'm thinking, yeah, this isn't bad, right? But I do remember thinking to myself, because that's when I was introduced to the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. They're sitting on the wall, and the step one where our lives are, we're powerless and our lives are unmanageable. And I remember thinking, okay, my life may be a little powerless over these drugs and alcohol, but it's certainly not unmanageable. I've got the wife, I've got the car, I've got the job.
Got a job.
Now you need those steps. I don't need those steps, right?
Right.
But I do remember, because people will say, well, Mike, then treatment didn't work for you. And I said, no. It planted the seed. And I always, in the back of my mind, thought if it gets bad enough again, I can always come to a place like this. Right. So it planted the seed that there was a solution, that there was a different life that I could live if this drinking and drug thing didn't work out for me.
Right.
I come back from Arizona. That's where I went to treatment, and checked into Highland Ridge Hospital, did their IOP there. I think it was like a 6-week program. And then I stayed sober for 6 weeks after that. And then I was right back on the pills again. Right. I wasn't active in the recovery community. I didn't find a connection. I was still thinking I was different, that, I had a legitimate problem, an excuse. And then my wife came to me, my ex-wife, and said, listen, it's either me or the drugs.
Yeah.
Easy decision for me. I choose the drugs.
Wow.
So we got divorced.
Wow.
So again, now I'm starting to fall short based on my belief system and the narrative now that's continuing in my life, and letting my family down, letting myself down. And really over the next, I'd say, so that would have been about 2005 till 2010 was really just a blur, because at that point I had financial freedom. I was single. I had moved back from Vegas to Utah at that point. I was traveling a lot around the world. I got into a lot of club drugs. I was into the ecstasy, cocaine. Yeah. But the one common substance that I put into my body every single day was alcohol. That was something that was very common for me.
Sure.
Some people wake up and have cream and sugar in their coffee. I was mixing tequila in my coffee. That was just part of who I was. Yeah. Then fast forward to 2010, and I found myself in a situation to where really I was conducting more of kind of my own harm reduction in my life. I was taking so many pills that I had an acquaintance introduce me to methadone. And he said to me, he says, he says this, you're not necessarily going to get high off of it, but you're not going to get sick anymore, because I couldn't take enough medication. I was too scared at that point to put a needle in my arm. My friends were doing it. I had family members that were involved, and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And so he introduced me to these wafers, these methadone wafers, where you could break them up in quarters, and I could take a quarter of it in the morning, so I didn't get sick. The diarrhea, the cramping, the shakes, everything would go away, and then I'd take a quarter of it in the evening to get me through the night. And I did that for almost 2 years, Todd.
Really?
And I wasn't going to a clinic. I wasn't going to a counselor. It was my own form of medication-assisted therapy, right? Prescribed by me because, right, I'm the boss of my life. Yeah, Johnny Farmer at his best. And then really, I remember one day I was looking for my dealer. I couldn't get a hold of him, and he was just here in the avenues. And so I drove up by his house, and I ran into one of his neighbors. And he said, "You didn't hear?" And I said, "No, what happened?" And he said, he got popped on a violation of probation or a parole violation, and he's back in prison.
Wow.
And my heart sank because now there goes my supply.
Now what am I going to do?
What am I going to do? So what do I always do when things get tough? I run. So I slowly started to detox. I called my older brother. I'd already been to uni once, so now I'm going back to uni again. At this point now they're giving me a discount because I'm on the retread plan. So I'm going back into uni, and now I'm detoxing off of methadone. And that was an experience that I'll never forget. It was one thing to detox off some of the other medications,
sure,
but that process of getting off methadone was excruciating. I mean, it lasted for weeks for me.
Yeah, I've heard stories that
couldn't
just
sleep.
Brutal.
Bones were aching. And I only spent about 4 or 5 days in uni, and then my family visited me and said, "Listen, we're going to get you some help, and we got the place that you need to go to." And again, begrudgingly, I felt like they were intervening on me.
Right.
They sent me to a place in Baton Rouge, Louisiana called St. Christopher's, a therapeutic community. I call it my redneck rehab experience. It was a boys' ranch. It was based on discipline, hard work, changing behaviors.
Yeah.
And I was pissed and I hated it. And I only lasted there 30 days.
Really?
And I said, I'm done. I'm 30 days clean. I got this. The only difference when I came back from Baton Rouge was now I was done being a drug addict. I didn't touch drugs after that point, but I picked up the alcohol and just continued with the alcohol because I needed something, right? I just thought, now, I can be an alcoholic. I can control my drinking.
Yeah, you had this belief you still needed something to be okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so then that continued from 2010 till about 2012. And there were 2 key events that happened in my life. In 2011, I found myself in a little bit of trouble. Now I'm getting DUIs. Now I'm going to jail. And I had a really, really close friend who was from Argentina. And he invited me. He says, "Why don't you come down to Argentina for a little while? Come down, get away, check out, come down here and hang with me." And so I put together enough money to just buy a one-way ticket to go to Argentina. And I had no plans of coming back to the United States. And I get down there, and you can imagine, it went to a whole nother level with the drugs and the alcohol and all that kind of stuff. And, the story around, his name is Carlos Simonetti. I lasted down there for about a year, and he actually died from a drug overdose. So that was the real first kind of impact of someone close to me that I lost. And then shortly after, when I came back from Argentina, is when I lost my little brother, Dustin Haws, on June 29th, 2012.
And how soon was that after?
Just a couple of months after.
Just a couple months after.
Yeah, just a couple months after.
Let's talk about that and how that affected you. I mean, I know that was a tough time, obviously.
Yeah, Todd, it's still tough for me to talk about my little brother because it brings up some guilt and shame in my life, being his older brother, not being there to support him. He was actually in recovery. He was living in a local sober living home here in Salt Lake City when we lost Dustin. My new life date is about 3 weeks after Dustin passed away. But what's crazy about addiction and this unhealthy lifestyle, these unhealthy behaviors, was when we lost Dustin, my mother and father actually went out to go visit Dustin the night before he passed. And my mom visited him at this facility he was living at. And she said to my dad, she says, something just doesn't feel right here. I don't know if it's the lack of structure or that there's 10 guys living in a little room.
Right.
But it just didn't feel right. And then we got the phone call the next day that there were 3 of them that went out that night. All 3 of them overdosed. When one of the guys came to, he saw what had happened and he fled and ran.
Really?
The second guy came to, tried to revive my little brother. Narcan wasn't available, so they couldn't get their hands on that. And so, we lost him. We lost him that morning of June 29th, 2012.
And how old's Dustin?
He was 21 years old when we lost him. And really, the sad thing is for me, I wanted to help and be there, but based on where I was at, I just, that there was only so much that I could do. And I remember calling my dad after we lost Dustin, and I said to him, Dad, let me help with the funeral services. Let me help. We didn't have any burial plots. And so I got on KSL. I found some burial plots that just there at the Lakeview Cemetery up by the Bountiful Temple. And I met a guy up there, and I bought 10 burial plots, and I'm coming down off the hill. And you have to remember, this is only a day or two after we lost Dustin. I'm coming down off the hill, and it's about 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm driving from Bountiful up to Farmington where my family lives. And I roll my car on the freeway right before the Centerville exit.
Wow. My
car rolls on the freeway. It ends up in the ditch between I-15 and the frontage road, and it's on its side. And I remember rolling the window down and climbing out and dusting myself off, and I thought to myself, oh shit, I got a bottle of vodka in there. So I climb back in my car to grab that bottle of vodka, toss it out in the weeds. As soon as I get out of my car again, there's a police officer that had stopped.
That watched you do
that watched me do the whole thing.
Wow.
So he shows up. He says, have you been drinking? Absolutely not. I mean, it's 10 in the morning. Normal people don't start drinking at 10 in the morning. Right. And he says, you need to surrender to a field sobriety test. I said, absolutely not. I'm not going to do that. They had an ambulance there. I was a little dizzy. So they put me in the ambulance. Right. And they I said, you guys need a warrant before you take my blood. And sure enough, they had a fax machine back, then, and they produced and said, no, here's our warrant. And they drew my blood right then and there.
Wow.
They take me up to the hospital. I kind of come to. I'm handcuffed to the hospital bed. I've got 2 police officers standing outside of my hospital room, and then they take me to jail. And so I do what I always do. I call my brother, ask him to bail me out. And this time, instead of taking me home, he takes me down to the Red Barn. My dad's down at the Red Barn, sitting there in the front room.
Right.
And I said, David, please don't take me. I'm not ready to see Dad. I don't need to see the family. Let me just, wrap my head around this and put a game plan together. She said, no, we're going to go down and see Dad. So I walk into the Red Barn. My dad's sitting there in his chair, and he's just in tears.
Sure.
And he says, Michael, we just lost your little brother, Dustin. He said, are we going to lose you too?
Yeah.
And that's where it hit me, Todd. That's where I just lost it. And we talk about those moments where our lives are saved by inches and seconds, literally.
Yeah.
I surrendered. I completely just gave up and said, Dad, I need some help. Now, the difference this time, the way my dad handled this situation, instead of telling me what to do, motivational interviewing, he said, what do you need? How can we as a family support you?
Right.
So now it's my idea.
Yeah.
And as I'm sitting there, I had already been kind of planning,
right.
Putting together a game plan of what I was going to do. And I said, Dad, I'd really like to go to this facility. I'd like to get out of town. It's called Hazelden, which is now Hazelden Betty Ford.
Sure.
I said, I'd really like to go there. He says, let me check it out. He says, give me a couple of hours. And he says, I'll get in touch with you, and we'll give you some feedback. Within about a half hour, he calls me. He says, Mike, let's get you some help. Let's, get you to where you need to be. And the family will support you 100%.
Right.
So now this is my idea. Now I've got to own this. And that was a big pivotal moment in my life, because now I'm thinking, well, shoot, I've got to step up now. I've got to, I got to own this decision.
Right.
And so then I go off to rehab again. Right. And I do the drill. And at the end of 30 days, I'm right back where I was, saying, man, I got this. I need to go home. And then a counselor comes to me and says, no, you need to continue. And I had that internal conflict and battle again with myself, and I surrendered. Right. I said, all right, cool. And then at the end of 60 days, my counselor said, we're going to send you back to Utah. You're going to go to sober living. And I said, no, I'm not ready to go yet. My roommate he's a doctor, and he gets to stay 90 days. I want to stay 90 days, right? I always want what I can't have, right? So then I stay 90 days, right. And then I come back home to Utah, and I go down to a place here in Salt Lake City called Project Recovery that's no longer around.
Right.
And I go check in there, and I say, I'm going to be here 30 days. And they said, no, you're not. The minimum stay here is 90 days. I'm like, oh, shit, again, here we go. Right? I got shit to do. I mean, at this point, now I got to start making amends,
so
right?
You went straight from
Hazelden
to straight there.
To Project Recovery.
So 90 and then now another 90.
And now another 90, right.
Okay.
So I'm there 90 days, and I'm not ready to go at the end of 90 days. So I end up staying there 6 months. And then at the end of 6 months, the owners came to me and says, Mike, we'd like you to stay on and be a recovery coach. So then I stayed another 6 months.
And you're like...
And I just started to accept, realizing that I didn't have this figured out. And so I remember some of my acquaintances from rehab saying, Mike, you're still sober. What are you doing? I said, well, damn, I'm still in rehab. I still have structure around me. I'm still drug testing. I'm still going to IOP. I'm now getting connected to the community here in Salt Lake.
You're being accountable to people.
Exactly. Yeah. And so for me, that was very, very instrumental to get me onto the path. And that was a game changer for me, because now I'm putting together, a structured program and with support around me that's going on almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And so that's something that really stayed with me with length of time. There's got to be length of time. Yeah. And so, and I jokingly say this, Todd, but the best thing that I did early on in my recovery was fire myself as CEO of my life. Because if you would have followed me around and you would have seen the jobs that I lost and the toes of the people that I stepped on, you would have said, whoever's running that guy's life is out to destroy him.
Right.
And so I always say that, if you got a good idea, contact me. If you got a great idea, get your ass over to my house, because my great ideas usually ended up with me behind bars, or at least in handcuffs.
Yeah.
So that for me was really the game changer. And then from that point on, like any good recovering drug addict, I want to go out and save the world. Right. So now I got to go get a college degree to become a social worker. I go up to the University of Utah. I sign up for the ASUDC program, for the substance use disorder program, because now it's still all about me, right? Even though I'm sober, now I got to go out and save everyone else. Right. And that's when we really started to talk about Red Barn and Red Barn Farms. And my dad and myself and my family, we got together and we said, what can we do here in our community to give back? And we didn't have a clue. But what we did realize, Todd, is that we had a safe place where we could have meetings and support groups, and we found that it was very cathartic for us to start telling our story. So we started to invite people from the community. We had Al-Anon meetings in there. We had AA meetings. I contacted my buddy Blue Robinson to start hosting Addict to Athlete up there. I got certified in smart recovery, so we started having smart recovery groups. I finished my ASUDC program at the University of Utah, and then I got a job up at Davis Behavioral Health working as a case manager. So we started doing recovery groups up there. And so we started this whole process of really trying to figure out our identity and what we were all about. And there was a key moment when I went back to school that really kind of, stamped, the path that we're on today. And we were reading about therapeutic communities. And there was a little paragraph in my social work textbook that talked about Delancey Street Foundation. 2-year or multi-year program, life skills, work, discipline. It's not about the drugs. It's not about the alcohol. It's about changing behavior. It's about integrity. It's about hard work. And that one little paragraph, it was almost like, this is exactly why I came back to school. That was one of those aha moments. And I remember calling my dad saying, Dad, we got to go out there. We got to go check this place out.
Can I say something too that just I made this connection in my head? So you grew up with a dad who was exactly what you just said.
Exactly. Yep.
And here you were rebelling against it.
Yeah.
Though, I'm tearing up as I'm saying this because, wow, what... And you were hearing this message as a young kid, but you had that belief you didn't fit in. But now it's come full circle here. Yep. You read this little paragraph, and it's almost like a slap in the face, like, hey, wake up, dude.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Here it is.
Yeah.
It's been here the whole time, but now you're really hearing it for the first time.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just put that in my head.
Thank you. And thank you for pointing that out and sharing that.
Man.
Because if you would have said, Mike, if you could design your family today, the perfect family that you could have grown up in, it's the family that I had.
Right.
My dad, my mom, my siblings, all the love, support. I mean, I wish I had a better excuse for being a recovering drug addict, that I was molested or that I was abandoned. I mean, my mom forgot me, one time from soccer practice, and now I've got abandonment issues, right? And I'm still chewing on that at 42 years old. Like, get over it, right?
Right.
But it's the integrity piece. It's the accountability. It's the honesty. It's the hard work. It's, and that's the byproduct. And what I teach the students at Red Barn Academy is it's not about the drinking. It's not about those unhealthy behaviors. It's about the relationships. It's the relationship with yourself. It's the relationship with God or some universal conscience, and the relationship with the people around you. Because see, today, really the litmus test that I run on myself, if I want to gauge my relationship with God and my spiritual connection today, all I have to do is look around and look at the people that are around me. And how close am I with my family?
Right.
Am I at odds with them? Because, and I jokingly say this is, my family, they're the ones who push my buttons because they're the ones who installed them, right?
Yeah.
So if I want to test my spiritual condition, I go hang with my family. And if I'm not close to my family, then it's a good indication that I'm not close to God.
Exactly.
And that's how I gauge it
Love
today.
that. Yeah.
And so this path that I'm on with my father and my family right now is such an amazing blessing in my life, because there was a point in my life, Todd, where I thought I would never speak to my father again.
Wow.
Now I talk to him every single day.
Yeah.
He's has a seat at my table. We teach our students to set goals, but we first have them put together a list of names of board of directors, so they can run some of their goals by them and get some feedback from people that they look up to.
Right.
My dad has a seat right there, and I run everything by him. And I'm so grateful for that relationship that I have today with my father. And so to be able to do this kind of work, and I know it's therapeutic for him, as he works through his grief with regards to my little brother, because we all grieve differently. I've done a lot of work with my little brother, but it took me 2 years before I could go visit Dustin up there at the cemetery.
Wow.
And I remember, because it was on my birthday, and my wife now, and I'll talk about her in a minute,
Sure.
Because she's such a huge blessing in my life. But
Yeah.
she said to me, it was my birthday a couple years ago. She says, "What do you want to do today?" I said, "I need to go spend the day with Dustin." So I do all this writing, and I've been working on it for a couple of years.
Sure.
So this is, he passed in 2012. So this is 2014. So this is 4 years ago. And I go up there, and, I read to him, and I'm sharing all this stuff with him and doing what I can to, go through my amends with him, and crying and laughing and thinking about all the wonderful times we had together. And then all of a sudden this rainstorm comes in and just starts dumping on me. It's kind of like my little brother saying, "All right, dude, you've been here. You're good. Get the hell out of here.
Go
and
live
move
your
on.
life."
Go
Yeah.
live your life now." Right. And it just dumped on me. I was like, "All right, I get it, bro. I'm out."
I'm
right.
out of here. Yeah.
But every time I have, even before I came and sat down with you today, I go up and visit him.
Oh, that's
when I have an
awesome.
opportunity to speak or tell his story, I want to check my motives, and, I want to honor him because he was such a good kid.
Sure.
He was an athlete, basketball player, a brother, a friend, and just a really, really good kid. And sometimes it's hard for me, Todd, because it very easily could be Dustin sitting here telling his story and telling his story of his older brother, Mike, that passed away from an overdose.
I mean, and you rolled your car before his
Yeah.
funeral.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have died then.
Yeah, we could have had a double funeral.
I mean,
right?
can you imagine? I mean, again, when you were saying that, man, it was hit me so hard, Johnny, in the heart when I was imagining your dad when you came walking into the Red Barn and he's just crying, going, "Are we going to lose you too, man? I can't do this."
Yeah.
I can. Oh man.
Yeah, you can't. I
What a
can't do this
moment.
as a parent.
What a
I've
moment.
just lost one son. I can't lose
Yeah.
another one.
Wow.
And so that was a defining moment
Sure.
in my life where, I firmly believe, sometimes I would say in the past that, from 2004 to 2012, it took me 8 years to get sober. No, it's a split decision. And that's what I tell my guys today. It's a split decision that you make, that I made, that I'm going to start from this day forward acting with integrity and being honest and being accountable. And that's who I am today. I was just too afraid and too scared, of really accepting, responsibility. And maybe it was fear of failure. Maybe it was those insecurities or the unknown or whatever that is. But that was a defining moment in my life, and really what set us on the course that we're on today with Red Barn Academy.
Yeah. That's beautiful, man. I'm just glad I know you, dude. I'm serious.
Thank
I mean
you.
that.
Thank you.
Powerful.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the Red Barn Academy.
Okay.
Obviously, this all led up to what you're doing today. You guys are doing amazing things up there. A couple of things that I had researched on it is, you guys live by the principles of hard work, discipline, accountability, integrity, and then the each one, teach one.
Exactly.
Which I absolutely love. I mean, that's just beautiful there too. So let's talk about the Red Barn Academy and kind of your guys' philosophy and what you guys are doing today and what might be some future plans or whatever.
Perfect. Thank
Let's
you.
talk about that.
Yeah, thanks for asking about that, Todd.
Sure.
So we go down to Delancey Street, go down there for what they call, it's their Institute for Social Renewal, their replication training. And so they're big advocates to teach, and their kind of outward mindset is to teach other facilities to implement and the whole therapeutic community model about changing behavior.
Right.
And so we go down there, I take my dad, I take a couple of board members, I sit down, at the introduction there, because we're going to be there for 4 or 5 days. And there's a gentleman sitting right next to me to my right. And I look over at him and, I said, "You guys, you're from Utah?" He says, "Yeah, we're from Utah." He says, "Where are you guys from?" I said, "I'm from Utah. I brought my team down from Utah." I said, "So, tell me a little bit about who you guys are." And he says, "Well, I'm Joseph Grenny." And I said, "Oh, Joseph Grenny." I had read his Vital Smarts,
Sure.
Crucial Conversations, and
Yeah.
some of his books. I said, "Really?" I said, I know Vital Smarts well." And I said, "What are you doing here, Joseph?" I knew he was a social scientist.
Right.
Really looked up to him. He says, "We're studying this model." He says, "We're going to bring a Delancey Street to Utah." And me just kind of being dumb and naive and egotistical, he says, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I want to bring a Delancey Street to Utah." So in that moment, we shook hands, we gave each other a hug, and said, "All right, let's help each other.
Let's do it.
Let's do it together."
Yeah.
Now, Joseph and his team, I would be remiss if I didn't say this, Todd. They have been such a wonderful big brother, partner, mentor, friend. He's helped me along the way over the last couple of years when I've started to get off track a little bit. But we forged a friendship and a relationship. In fact, I worked with his daughter, Kara, down in the restaurant. He had his family down there.
Right.
My dad worked in the automotive shop. We had our CFO down there that worked in the kitchen. And so we started to, for the first time, he was quite a bit further along than us,
Right.
but we started to study this therapeutic model. And I have to say that as I think about my little brother, Dustin, he'd been to rehab a couple of times. He'd been to
Sure.
jail a couple of times.
Right.
He didn't need to go back to another rehab.
Right.
He needed to learn the life skills. He needed to learn how to make his bed. He needed to learn to show up on time. He needed to learn the proper way to cope with life.
Yeah.
And really, those unhealthy behaviors that had plagued him, they were perpetuated based on the therapy he went and did, and the treatment that he went and did. And so that really, the light went on for me in that moment. And so then we started to visit the Vulcan Academy. John Vulcan's a good friend of
Sure.
mine.
Yeah.
We went up there and stayed at his facility up in Vancouver and visited Seattle, and we go down every year to see them down in Phoenix. And and then also obviously you've got the Other Side Academy, and then you've got TROSA, back in
Right.
North Carolina,
Yeah.
that Kevin McDonald. And so my team and we went out there about 6 months ago to study their model. And so we've done a lot of research and development.
That's awesome.
And, but we did have one little hiccup along the way that I'd like to share with you real
Yeah.
quick, and the listeners, is we were into this process, and we weren't exactly sure how to pull this off. And I think, being naive and ignorance is bliss is really true in this
Sure.
in this
Sure.
situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what happened was we have a very active board of directors at Red Barn, and one of our board members is this retired district court judge, Judge Mehmet. He's the one who set up the Davis County drug court system in Davis County.
Okay.
So he says, "Mike," he says one day, you need to take a hard look at working with insurance companies, because you're going to alienate those people, and you need to look at the biopsychosocial model." And I said, "All right, cool. We'll take a look at that."
Yeah.
And then I had a mentor who runs, First Step House. This Sean McMillan's a good friend of mine. And I went to him for some feedback, and he was one of my professors up at the U. And I said, "Sean, I think we're going to turn this into more of a, JCO accredited, treatment center." And he says, "All right." He says, "If you do that, don't be afraid to go out and hire your replacement." I said, "Okay, cool." So I went out and found this gal that has a PhD in animal assisted therapy,
Right.
a master's degree. I mean, her credentials were a mile long. She was hired to come on and be our clinical director. We were trying to get paneled with insurance companies. I remember meeting with Blue Cross and Blue Shield and giving them a tour of the farm. I was excited because we have beehives out there, right? And I was sharing with the gal that came out and visited that, "Hey, we've got bees." And she goes, "No, that's not going to work. We're not going to reimburse you for a bee workshop, right?" And she goes, "The greenhouse, let's go look at the greenhouse." We walk in the greenhouse, and she sees fertilizers and things. She says, "Well, this doesn't work." And, I was really felt bad, because I was like, this isn't working out. You're
Right.
going to come tell me how to run Red Barn? I just said, that just doesn't sit well with me. And then we met with Medicaid and had the same experience. And, Todd, I almost had this nervous breakdown. I had this panic attack. I remember waking up one morning, and it was kind of like in Lion King, where Mufasa comes back and visits Simba and says, "You've forgotten who you are."
Yeah.
And my wife looks at me and says, "What's going on?" And I said, "Babe, this just doesn't feel right. Something's not right." And so what do? When I find myself in a bind, I pick up the phone, I call Joseph Grenny. I said, Mr. Granny, I said, I'm struggling. I'm on this path. I need some feedback. And he says, Mike, he says, no. Stay the course. I will help you. We will help you here at the Other Side Academy. We don't need another treatment center here in Utah. And he was cool. He says, we've got wonderful treatment centers here. He says, we need more therapeutic communities. He says, call Dave DeRocher, move into the Other Side Academy, live there for a week, and we'll teach you everything that we can teach you.
Wow.
So I grabbed my dad again and my CFO. They only lasted about 2 days there. I did last the full week.
Did you make it a week?
I made the full week. They played the games with me.
Did you get any haircuts?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. I walked around entitled. I know Dave told them to light me up over there, and they certainly did. I wore my watch when I wasn't supposed to. One day I didn't shave, and I got community service for that.
Right.
It was absolutely unbelievable. And so that really brought us back to where this path that we're on today, which, is we are a true therapeutic community. We are, minimum stay 2-year program. And anytime that I get off track, I go spend time with, the Delancey Streets of the world, the Other Side Academy, Trosa. We're close, like I said, with the Vulcan Academy. And, we've made our mistakes along the way. Initially, when we started, we were only going to be a 1-year program. And to be honest with you and the listeners, it was because of my own insecurities. I thought no one's going to want to commit to this for 2 years.
Right.
And we've had students that have been with us
because you wouldn't have.
Exactly.
Yeah, back then you were like,
there's no way I'm doing it. Exactly. You're crazy. I couldn't do anything for 6 months, let alone for a year or 2 years.
30 days, I'm out of here.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was. And so we've even brought people on to the Red Barn Academy underneath the commitment of just 1 year. And so we've had them fulfill those commitments. We have our house manager as a staff member now. He fulfilled his commitment to the state, to the criminal justice system, and now he's working at Red Barn and continuing on that path. But everyone else at Red Barn, we've got 18 students there now. Every one of them there now is with that minimum stay of a 2-year commitment.
Wow, that's awesome.
So we do play games. Just like, Dr. De Leon in his book, The Therapeutic Community. In fact, I had an opportunity to meet him and work with him a little bit. But we do the games. We do haircuts. We do pull-ups. We have a morning meeting. We have a social enterprise where we've got a business department. We've got, a moving department. My guys are out shoveling snow today, landscaping. We had a move today up in Park City. And the Other Side Academy has supported us all along the way, helping us out all along the way.
What a great organization to be involved with. And then, Joseph Granny, salt of the earth, an amazing individual.
Yeah, I was just on the phone with Tim Stay this morning because I was lost on something else. I said, Tim, I need your help. He's all right. That's what we're here to do.
Dude.
And that outward mindset. And
dude, it's amazing.
It is. And now I want to do that. We want Red Barn Academy to be a model to where anyone that wants to come and visit, and, you need our policies and procedures. You need our curriculum. This is what we've learned from, our mistakes. It's been a huge blessing here in our community because, we get at least 15 to 20 letters a week from the different jails and prisons here in Utah. Tomorrow I'm headed down to Utah County Jail to do 5 interviews. And so I'm the one who gets to go out now and do the interviews. And, and Dave and Alan have both helped me a little bit with that. But for the most part, they've said, Mike, go figure it out. You're fine. You can do it. And just so you know, when we first started, they had only been open for a year. And I said, will you guys come out here? We'll call this the Other Side Academy at Red Barn. And I brought their whole team out. And they walked around and they looked around and they said, Mike, you got this, bro. You can do this.
Yeah. You don't need our name.
You don't need us. Yeah, that's what they said. You don't need us. We'll support you. We'll help you out. And to their credit, they have fulfilled that. And they just said, you got this. Do this. You can do this. And so, like I said, we have capacity at Red Barn Academy for 44 men. We're a men's only facility, 18 and older. Okay. Our mission statement talks about families. Our next facility that we will be building here next year will be a women and children's facility.
Right on.
So we'll be able to work with the families.
Right
our goal, and I feel like our sweet spot, Todd, is about 150 to maybe 175 students out there at the farm. Mm-hmm. The nonprofit, because it is important for you and the listeners to know that we are, a 501c3, and it doesn't cost anything to come to Red Barn Academy. It's a pretty intense interview process and screening process that we go through. And people will say, Mike, you're a jerk. And I say, it's not that I'm being a jerk. It's that I want to make sure that this is appropriate for you. The last thing you need to do is come to Red Barn and fail.
Right.
You've already got enough failures. And so
it's almost like, how bad do you want this?
Exactly.
Are you really willing to commit to this?
And that's the Johnny Farmer. That's the alter ego that I've created. When I go down to the jails and interview these guys, I take it to a whole nother level. I probably use too many F words and colorful language, but I really, and this is what I've learned from, Dave over at the Other Side Academy is I want to see some emotion. I want to elicit some, I want to see that there's some, there's some desire there to really change. Don't give me the same bullshit story that I hear every single time. I want to see it and feel it.
Right.
And so,
love it.
That's really where we're at today. But the thing that's really exciting, I think, about Red Barn Academy is it is a farm setting. We have alpacas, we have chickens, we have ducks, we have dogs, we have cats. And what I found, Todd, is every student that comes into Red Barn, now they have the capacity to be honest, but they're not able to actually live by integrity when they first get there. I know that. They know that I know that. They don't have this outward mindset. They're not thinking about other people.
Yeah.
So we assign them an animal. And what I found is they'll be more service oriented towards an animal than they will another human being, because
isn't that fascinating?
They're worried about that you're going to let them down or I'm going to let them down because they haven't been able to trust humans in the past. And now they start serving this animal. They start feeding the dog and walking the dog and caring for the dog. And now they're thinking about something else other than themselves.
Yeah.
And then you see that paradigm shift happen. And this social, I hate to say this, but it really is a social experiment. And I love the work that I do because I get to see the transformation
you get to watch it
right there unfold. And the stuff that I've seen, you couldn't make it up. It's unbelievable. We are writing a book about Red Barn Academy. It's called The Red Barn Academy Way. And
love it.
And we will definitely share that and share our experiences. But to watch these men shift from serving these animals then to serving their brothers and developing this connection and really these relationships with depth and weight that only comes from a therapeutic community of confrontation, of calling each other out. I've told every man that comes into Red Barn, my job is to poke and prod at you all day, every single day. It's a pressure cooker up there.
Right.
I want you to be angry. I want you to be sad. I want you to be happy, joyful. I want you to experience every range of emotion and not get high.
Right.
So when you leave Red Barn, you can say, okay, I can do this. I don't have to go get high. I can write in my journal. I can meditate. I can sit in it and realize that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Those life skills that are taught there in that therapeutic community setting that are a byproduct of a 3-hour game where there's tears and there's people that are upset and breaking stuff and punching holes in walls. That's where it gets to. But at the end of the day, they feel safe because that's the commitment that I've made to them.
Right.
Is you're going to have a safe place to live. Your needs will be met, but you've got to trust the process. You've got to trust it.
Love it. Wow. Amazing.
So
amazing. That's so neat. And what I love about your story too is how much effort and research you've put into this. You've traveled the country researching every little thing you could to make yours where it is today.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing, man. Love it.
Well, thank you.
What an amazing story. Seriously, amazing story, amazing life. You're doing amazing things. It's got to feel good to be Johnny Farmer today. It's got to feel pretty good.
Well, and the thing that I really wanted to touch on before we wrap up is the blessings that I've received that sometimes I feel like I don't merit or deserve, because, the grace that God has shown on me, my
Mm-hmm.
family. I have a wife today that she's my rock. She's the foundation that, when my life gets out of control, she's steady. She's, she's very, very caring, but she provides me the feedback because I get these blinders on and I get off course because I'm still crazy. I'm a recovered drug addict.
Thank you very much for saying that.
But I am recovered. I'm recovered from that hopeless state of mind. That's not who I am today, but I'm an adrenaline junkie. I still, I do these crazy obstacle course events, and I do Ironmans and triathlons and things like that. And, the other day I was losing my mind, and my wife has this ability to bring me back and hold me accountable. And she said, what the hell's going on with you? Right. And it was on a holiday, and I part of my routine is, because I'm all about developing discipline and a routine. It was my day to be in the pool to swim, and I couldn't find a pool that was open. I was losing my mind. And she's like, everything's going to be okay. Yeah. And I looked at her because I'm sarcastic, and that's one of my character defects. I said, well, shit, babe, at least I'm not out looking for a liquor store, or I'm not out trying to find drugs anymore. Right. But I still have this mind that still gets a little out of control.
Sure. All or nothing.
I still get insecure. Yeah. I'm still concerned about what you think about me and how I look. That's a very common thread, I believe, with the people that, if I can just look good, then I can feel good. So I suffer from that delusion today. Sure. And so I have to check myself on that. And my wife plays the game with me. My wife is my tribe leader. My wife is the one who pulls me up. And now we have this little boy, Maverick, who has absolutely changed my life.
Yeah.
And sorry.
No, you're good.
But, he never has to see his dad in jail.
Yeah.
He never has to see his dad drunk. He never has to see his dad hit his mom. And, that's the message that I'm trying to share with my guys.
Right.
Is these relationships, the life that I have today, that is based on integrity. It's based on discipline, love, which I believe is the sacrifice of my time and, what I do, my energy to serve other people. I had no idea what I was missing out on, and I've got this beautiful family today. And, this little kid is so excited to see me on a daily basis. And, he's my why today. I get up in the morning, changed his diaper this morning at 2 a.m. He peed on me. He didn't pee in my mouth, so that's the silver lining. He just peed on my arm, right?
Yeah.
And so that for me is the byproduct of the work that we do. The work that you do is my relationships and the family that I get to come home to on a daily basis. And this is what I want for my guys.
Yeah.
And I tell my students at Red Barn, don't leave before the miracle happens.
Right.
And then when the miracle happens, stick around
Yep.
and share that with someone
Share
else.
it, baby. Yeah.
Because that's where I'm at today. Is I feel so blessed, and I'm so full of gratitude. And honestly, Todd, I feel like I'm living the dream.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. And man, what an amazing story you have. And I'm so glad that you are doing what you're doing. And I'm grateful that I know you. And I really meant what I said that. Any friend of Dave's is a friend of mine, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I'm
right.
glad we all kind of rub shoulders now, which is wonderful. And I can't wait to come up to the Red Barn and have an opportunity to speak to your students. A couple things, and then we'll wrap things up.
Okay.
If you could give a challenge to our listeners, a lot of our listeners probably have a son or a daughter who's struggling, or they might be struggling themselves. What advice or what challenge could you give our listeners today that would be helpful for them?
I love that, Todd, and thanks for asking me to do this. Never give up. The hope that, as I speak to families, I look at my life and I look at the people my students that I work with today, and change is possible, and changing behaviors is possible. It requires a lot of hard work and a lot of effort, but to never give up. The best thing that I can do for my family is stay healthy.
Right.
I have to do me. I have to be spiritually fit. I have to meditate, write in my journal. I have to have integrity in my life. And, I believe in attraction rather than promotion. And so I don't want to go out and say, you need to do this. I'm here to take your inventory. I say to people, if you want what I have, just do what I do. there's not a magic formula. There's not an algorithm or something. And I'll share that with you. And I'm happy to share that with families. And the one thing that's a little different about us than other therapeutic communities is that we are going to build a family program around this. Most therapeutic communities traditionally don't have a family program because it's too difficult.
Right.
We're cocky enough or confident enough that we believe here in our community that we're going to do it. And it's going to take some time, and it's going to be collaborating with other TCs that are out there. But for the families, it's to obviously never give up. Reach out. The one thing about Red Barn Academy, Todd, is not everyone's appropriate to come to Red Barn. But I would love to leave my contact information with the listeners, because 90% of the people that reach out to us, hey, you need to contact Todd up at Wasatch. You need to go check with this person or that. We're constantly helping them get to where they need to go. I call it a warm handoff.
Sure.
Not everyone's going to be appropriate for a TC model. And so I really pride myself in being educated enough, spending enough time. People will come down, and we will actually kind of conduct interventions at Red Barn. It's a softer approach. I tell them my story. I relate with them, and then I just say, hey, listen, let me help you get to where you need to be. Most of the time they come to Red Barn and think they want to check in. 90% of the time I refer them out somewhere else. So never give up. But the one challenge that I would give the listeners is what I've done with my students at Red Barn Academy is to write a personal mission statement. We check in, and we just started doing this here in the new year with the students. We do a morning meeting every morning at 6:45. I mean, my students are up every single day at 5 a.m. If they're up at 5:01, they've got 2 hours of community service. That's holidays and weekends, just to give you an idea. Our therapy obviously is work therapy. If you're pissed, go dig a hole. If you're still pissed, then you're going to fill the hole back in. You're going to get to a point to where you're not going to have enough energy to be pissed anymore, right? When you're awake, you're working. I mean, I could go into that for hours, but this idea of developing and changing the narrative, we're the ones who wrote the narrative. We need to change the dialogue in our head. And if that's just act as if until it becomes a habit over and over and over again, that's what we do with our personal mission statement. So, for example, for me, my mission statement is to be the world's best husband, father, and friend through integrity, discipline, and service to others. And I say that every single day, and we check in with the students to write that and to rewrite that and until you actually believe that and internalize that. And I know it's tough in the beginning, but that would be my challenge is that if each one of us had our own personal mission statements and we said that and we shared that with other people, that's what I've encouraged my students to do today. And the luxury we have, Todd, is they'll go to work today. They're applying their mission statement today. Then we come back and we do an evening meeting and we check in and we say, Todd, how were you able to apply your mission statement today out there, shoveling snow today? Or you're out there moving that family into their new home, which is a huge life event. And then they talk about how they were able to apply that or how they fell short. And, we're going to work on it again tomorrow.
I love that.
One of our deals we're doing is this. I've got my Sticky Bird shirt on right here. We're building, a restaurant right there next to Red Barn. That's going to be a restaurant that the students are going to build, the students are going to work in. And so when people say, how do we support Red Barn? It's going to be come down and eat our chicken. Come hear our story. We're going to put storyboards up to highlight the students and their successes and, where they came from and where they're at today. And, we'll have cheesy tagline like, give addiction a licking, eat more chicken, or, save the world from addiction, eat more chicken.
I love it.
And so that's part of our social enterprises, and the revenues that come off of Sticky Bird will come back and help us continue to build out our campus. Because see, we still have to build the women and children's housing. We got to build the graduate housing. So we're always looking for these opportunities where we can teach a life skill, generate the revenue, so it comes back in, because it's important for the listeners to know is we don't take any tax dollars, federal or state, and then we don't work with insurance companies.
No insurance money,
So we really depend on these social enterprises. And Sticky Bird, it's going to be a fun menu. We'll actually break ground on that in about 60 days.
That's cool.
And the students will help us build it, and they'll help us staff it, and it's going to be their story. So it's going to give us that platform to really talk about that. And I'm here to go on record to say there's going to be multiple Sticky Birds that you'll see here in the United States.
I'm with you, and I want to be there on the grand opening. So
please
let me know, dude.
For sure, we'll do a podcast out there.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Hey, let's plan it. You heard it here first. We will do
a
mobile podcast on here when you open up Sticky Bird. It'll be live, and we'll get the news. We'll get everybody, dude. It'll be amazing.
Okay, deal.
Wow. Well, if someone does want to reach out to you and they want to ask you a question, or if they want to, get in touch with the Red Barn Academy, how would they do that?
Best way to do that, Todd, is my email address is mike@redbarnacademy.org.
Okay.
I'm very, very accessible through email. The website is www.redbarnfarms. So it's redbarnfarms is plural.org. Or my cell phone number is 801-837-0706.
There you go, man.
So I'm happy to help out anyone any way that we can.
You just gave your number to 16,000 people.
Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
Isn't that beautiful?
I love it. I need to be more of service.
You're going to be busy.
Yeah. I mean, really, at the end of the day, if I
it.
know that service work is so important, who am I to deprive you of doing service work for me?
Sure.
So I appreciate you letting me be here today and for all the work you do. This is
you.
a real honor to be on your podcast. And
thank
I mean,
you,
you're a rock star here, bro, in our community.
Oh, wow.
So I'm happy to just be on for the ride.
Well, thank you, man. And truly a blessing. Listeners, what a treat we had today.
Thank you.
Hearing your story and what you've been through, how you've overcome it, how you live your life today, man. You truly are a light in this world that we all need to follow.
Thank you.
And I just can't thank you enough, and keep doing the great work you're doing. So there you go, listeners. Wow, what a great challenge, what a great story, and what a great model for us to follow is Johnny Farmer's life. Let's all, when I hear things like this is the honest truth. As you're sharing your story and what you've been through and how you've overcome it, I'm in my head over here going, I need to be better.
Thank you.
I mean that.
Thank you.
And I'm sure our listeners will feel the same way. So thank you so much. And I feel so blessed. I've had such amazing guests on, and it just makes me want to be a better person. So I'm grateful to rub shoulders with you, my friend.
Thank you.
I mean that a lot. So there you go, listeners. Share this with anyone you know that might be struggling, who having a hard time. They're not sure where to turn. Share them Johnny's story. Get this out to as many people as you can. Thank you for all your support and allowing us to trend on iTunes. Again, we're sponsored by Veracity Networks. They're an amazing telecom communications company, and they love what we're doing. They're going to love, obviously, Johnny and what he's doing as well. And I'm just so very, very blessed and fortunate. I'm glad to be clean. I'm glad to be recovered, sitting here with Johnny as well, who is also recovered. What a beautiful thing, and that can be you as well. And so thank you so much, and till next time.
All right, love you, bro.
Okay,
Thank
love
you.
Man. Thank you so much.